Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced, and welcome to another video in this series on Dremio Cloud 101. So in the last video, we focused on just kind of getting you set up with Dremio Cloud. Okay, so now when you first get to Dremio Cloud, you're going to have your default catalog set up. And again, these are referred to as Arctic catalogs. Arctic is basically Dremio's catalog product. And essentially what it is, it's a Nessie catalog with some really cool extra features. And it's probably one of the best places to kind of get started playing with Dremio. So you're already going to have this default catalog set up when you set up your project. And just to understand a little bit more, if we right click it, we can go to the settings of that catalog. Okay. And what we basically want to point out is that it's going to be storing on your cloud. Okay, so again, that's the beauty of the data lakehouse. The idea here is that you generally always have control of your data. Dremio never wants to be lock in your data, lock you in. So the idea is that your data is going to get stored on your data lake, whether it's AWS or Azure. So when I take a look at my catalog, I can see that it's being stored in this particular bucket on S3. Okay, so you can, and then I didn't have to set that up. Dremio sets that all up for me. That's part of the setup process. When you set up Dremio, you're going to it'll generate that access so that way it can help curate a lot of this stuff for you. Okay. But now if I wanted to know that, so that way I can go take a look at that bucket in my S3 account, I can go find that information. Or if I wanted to point it to a bucket that I created, I can change that there. Okay. I mean, it's going to assign me a bucket, but again, I can change that. You can change these settings. Okay. Although, again, I'd recommend just keeping it as is, because why? But each of these Arctic catalogs just basically give you a nice abstraction for you to interact with Iceberg tables. And then the cool thing about Iceberg tables on Dremio is that Iceberg tables, you have full CRUD support with Iceberg tables. That means you can create Iceberg tables, you can drop Iceberg tables, you can update Iceberg tables, you can insert records into Iceberg tables, you can do a lot more. Okay, there's also a lot of maintenance built in, so you can run operations such as our vacuum command and optimize command to clean up and optimize your Iceberg tables. But the nice thing about Arctic catalogs, so again, if you click right over here, we can go take a look at our different Arctic catalogs. So if I take a look at my main Arctic catalog, which I called Arctic because why not? I can take a look at all the data sets that this particular is tracking. So I can go in here, I can go see, like right now there's nothing in that one. I think I might have put it in something in, there we go, here's some. Okay, so I can see some Iceberg tables there. These purple ones, just so you know, when you see a purple icon like this, that stands for a physical table, meaning it's an original table. It's the original physical data set, the raw data. Anytime you see the green data set, that represents a view. Okay, but I can see everything that's in this catalog. I can track anytime anything in that catalog has changed because it's based on Nessie. So that means you have commits. So every time something changes in the catalog, there is a commit, and I can track what's been changing, where it's been changing, when it's been changing, get that commit ID. So that way, if I need to roll back to that, I can. You can create tags. So if you want to like tag a particular point in time, like tag the data, the catalog at the end of each month, so that way you can easily go back to that point in time. You can do that. You can create and manage branches. These are the niceties of using this particular catalog. Okay. And another nice thing you can do with your tables, if I click over here, so right over here, you see this little like gear icon. Okay. I have the ability to set an automatic schedule for optimizations, which means that on a set schedule that I set, it will go in there and run compaction, clean up any small files, just make life a lot easier. So again, it just makes it where your data lakehouse, basically using your data lake as a database, becomes you just don't have to think about it. You create tables, Dremio will auto clean them up for you, and you just kind of use it like you'd be using a data warehouse, but without having to make that additional copy of data, having it all in your data lake. Okay, so, and again, again, remember, just branches. So over here, I can see all the branches. Right now, I don't have any additional branches. In this particular catalog, I can go bring up the data as it was during certain commits. I have a very easy interface for browsing the data in that particular catalog and monitoring it. Okay, but let me go back to my Query Engine project, or my Sonar project. Okay, cool. But the thing is that that's not the only way you can use Iceberg in Dremio. Okay, if you already have Iceberg tables in many sources, they can connect to Dremio. Okay, so for example, if you have Iceberg tables tracked in an AWS Glue catalog, they can be used in Dremio and you get full CRUD, etc. Okay, if your Iceberg tables are in object storage like Amazon S3 or Azure storage like ADLS, well, guess what? You can use those Iceberg tables. You can create Iceberg tables, the whole shebang. Okay, and basically that story just kind of keeps expanding and expanding. So bottom line is, if you have Iceberg tables already somewhere, you can probably use them on Dremio, and Dremio will make them very easy for you to use it well, basically, if you don't already have an Iceberg catalog, we have a pretty nice one that you can use right out of the gate, and use whenever you want. Okay, but just to kind of show it to you in action, okay, I can easily create a table. So what I'm going to do is actually just walk through the whole process of creating a catalog. So in this case, let's go here. Actually, I can just click here to add a source, click here Arctic, and adding an additional catalog is as simple as just literally me going, say, hey, I want to add a new catalog, and giving it a name, and just saying, hey, I'm going to create a catalog called, we'll call this like Dremio Cloud 101. Okay, so all the stuff for this video series will be in this catalog. I click add, I give it a second for it to create the catalog, so it's going to go create the bucket in my AWS, assign it to this cloud, and configure it, and then I just hit save to add it, and that's going to add it to my list of sources over here, and see, there it is, Dremio Cloud 101. Okay, so like that, I now have a catalog to work with my Iceberg tables. And again, right out of the box, you're always going to have that default one the minute your account is set up. Okay, but now I can go over here and I could create a table. It was as simple as just saying, hey, I want to do Dremio, well, actually, let's do a full-on SQL here. Create table, Dremio Cloud 101 dot, first table. Okay, we'll just give it a very simple schema. Say name varchar. Okay, and let's run that query. So I'll click run. Okay, as you can see, I can have multiple tabs here, so we'll show you that in a second. Okay, but I can then run this, and actually let me just do a second query. Well, actually, let's do this first. Let's create the table. I'm going to run this, and that's going to begin running the query. So you can see here that query is represented right there, and it's complete now. And I can read the output, and I can see here that the table was created. Wonderful. Okay, simple as that. I just literally created a table on my Data.Lake house. Didn't require any crazy setup. Okay, any crazy catalog configurations, if you remember that from when we were doing it in Spark, in that Spark video series. It was just really simple. I just logged on to Dremio. I created my catalog. It's a couple of clicks, ran a create table statement, and I have a table. Okay, pretty straightforward. Okay, and cool. Now now what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up another tab. So here I click and create another tab, so that way I can switch between these tabs. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert some records into that table. Insert into. I don't feel like typing all that all over again, so I'm going to click here where it says Dremio Cloud 101. There's my first table, and I can just kind of drag that right over. Okay, well, that's a lot easier. It even includes the @branch statement in case I wanted to like query it at different branches. Okay, but we'll save the whole branch conversation for a different video. So insert into Dremio Cloud 101, first table, and then we'll put in the values, and then we'll say, hey, Alex Merced is the first, then Tony Merced. Okay, we'll leave it at that. Okay, and the cool thing about this is not only can I run one query, but I can run multiple queries. So let me actually just query that table immediately afterwards. Okay, so select all from, okay, although I should probably include a from keyword. That would be pretty important. Okay, and then I can just click run, and you'll see here is query 1 and query 2. Okay, and what it's going to do, it's going to go run query 1, although my engine did fall asleep, so it's restarting back up. So I'm going to pause it while that wakes up, and we'll talk more about that in a second. Okay, cool. Okay, so that query finished. Again, it took a minute because the engine had to start up, and I will explain how that all works, because that's important to keeping your costs down. But basically, I can see that the first query was successful and inserted 2 records. Okay, and then I query that, and I can see the results of that query right there. Okay, so you see, I'm working with Apache Iceberg tables of really little friction, and that's the beauty of it. I can take advantage of this technology, Apache Iceberg, pretty easily. And again, you don't necessarily have to, your end users don't have to be super technical to take advantage of these innovations. But let's talk about that whole engine thing for a moment. If I go to my project settings, notice there's a section called engines. Now, an engine essentially represents sort of a cluster that is running. So you can have multiple engines that actually, run your queries. So as you can see here, I have one engine that I named query that runs queries. That's of a medium size. Okay, so sort of there's different t-shirt sizes. The bigger the t-shirt size, the bigger the computers, and the more basically the more it's going to cost per second to run because of the instances that are running in your cloud storage. Because like anything else, everything is in your cloud storage. So basically, in this case, there are EC2 instances that are part of this cluster that are running in my AWS account. But in order to keep costs under control, so that way you don't have what happens in other places where your cloud build runs amok because you have instances that are just running perpetually, you can set up different rules. So you can see here on this particular query engine, I have it set up where basically there can only be one replica at a time. So if you imagine on having like dozens and dozens or hundreds of queries, you might want multiple replicas. So that way you can handle more concurrency. So you can set that number there. Again, this is generally only used by me, so one is enough. Now, generally you can set a minimum replica. So that way, as it tears down replicas that aren't being used, it'll only tear it down to the minimum. I set the minimum of 0, so that way when I'm not using this at all, they're all shut down. Okay? And then you can set how long it takes. So here in the advanced, you can set how long it takes before it gets shut down. So in this case, this is like 15 minutes. Well, it's 900 seconds. So that's going to be, let's see here, 60 times 10. Yeah, it's about like 15 minutes. Okay. And then you can set how long it'll take to shut down once it turns up. So in this case, I have a 15-minute window before it shuts down. Okay, so if I don't run a query within 15 minutes, it'll shut it down. I can set that to be more. I can set that to be less. But the beauty is that you have control over what infrastructure is being deployed to run your queries. Okay, so if all your engines are shut down, you're not incurring any cost while you have your Dremio account. Only when queries are running and engines are running are you going to be incurring any infrastructure costs. Okay, and the thing is that you might have lots of users, and you might want to have certain engines, like a small engine for low priority queries, and then maybe an extra large engine for very high priority queries. So the cool thing is you can do engine routing, where you can actually create logic and rules to say, hey, these particular queries by these particular users or this particular role, they go to this engine, and these other queries go to that engine. Okay, I've configured mine that all of them go to my query engine. Okay, but again, you could create as many rules as you want, and they can be as complex as you want. Okay, so those are two things I wanted to point out. Okay. Just so you're aware. So basically, again, you don't have to have infrastructure running 24/7, incurring costs. It only runs when you need it. Okay, and you can set up those rules for when you need it. Okay, so one of the cost-saving features of Dremio. And then when those engines are on, they can provide you really fast queries. So now if I were to run this again, okay, now that my engine's running, it'll run a lot faster the second time around because it's not waiting for that engine to start back up. Okay, and there it goes. Okay, it was done pretty quick. So just keep that in mind. If your engines happen to be off because of your settings, that initial query may take like a minute for an extra minute for that cluster to start back up, but it's usually pretty quick. And yeah, so that's the basics of working with Iceberg. So again, here's just showing you that, hey, there's these catalogs, these Iceberg catalogs, how easy it was to set one up. The fact that it gives you a UI to be able to monitor what's going on in the catalog, so I can see all the commits, all the transactions. And if I had multiple users, I could see who did them. Okay, I can just run normal SQL against them like this was like a normal database or data warehouse, even though all of this is just occurring on my S3 storage, okay, in Apache Iceberg format. Okay, and again, I didn't have to do any crazy configurations. Dremio just makes it just work, and that's the beauty of Dremio. Okay, and on top of it, I can go then query just other data sources that are not Iceberg sources that I just have sitting in my so for example, like Dremio has a sample data set, and we'll actually explore that in the next video. So I will save that for there. For now, I will see you in the next video.